The Justice Department will not prosecute two Baton Rouge police officers who shot and killed Alton Sterling last July. Cell phone video of Sterling's death sparked protests across the country. And joining me now is John Legend, who is in Baton Rouge campaigning for criminal justice reform. John, thank you so much for doing this. You know about the decision about those two police officers. What do you make of that?
Well, we're concerned. We're concerned that there continues to be a pattern that police officers can take the lives of civilians with impunity, and it continues to happen throughout the country, and we want to see change in that area.
The cell phone video showed Sterling pinned to the ground before he was shot. Police said that he was reaching for a gun. You know, the Sterling family, I've interviewed them, but they say, and their lawyers say, that they have seen evidence. One of the officers was heard yelling, you know, "I'll shoot you, bitch," and then escalating the situation. Federal prosecutors have concluded there is not enough evidence to charge the officers. What kind of message do you think, considering your efforts, what kind of message does that send to the country and to the world?
Well, we've seen this message sent far too many times that when police kill our citizens and our civilians, that their lives don't really matter because the police are able to do it with impunity. This is not new. We keep seeing it over and over, and something needs to change. We need our police to have better practices, and we need to make sure that that taking the life of a civilian, of a citizen, is the absolute last resort, and it needs to be done with the most respect for their life as possible. We need a system that honors those lives, and when police do the wrong thing, that they face some justice for that.
Yeah. You met with the governor, and then you testified before the Louisiana House Judiciary Committee. Tell us about the testimony, your testimony there.
Well, what we talked about today wasn't about police reform. It was about the overall criminal justice system and ending mass incarceration in Louisiana. That was our mission before we got here. This was planned before the decision on Alton Sterling was announced. And so it wasn't about police reform. It was about saying, how does Louisiana go from being overly punitive on crime to being smart on crime? How do we go from being how does Louisiana go from being the #1 incarcerator in the world to having a more sensible policy that is more cost effective and also more humane? And we had a great team of people that had worked for the last 2 years on using data, using input from all stakeholders to suggest some reforms that the state legislature could pass and the governor could sign. And we're very close to the finish line on getting those things passed and signed by the governor, but
What's
I wanted to come and give that extra push today to make it happen. Well, it's a number of things. It's quite a nice suite of legislation, but some of it has to do with reducing the penalties for certain crimes that have been overpunished, bringing some more clarity to which crimes are classified as felonies and which ones are not. Some of them are related to juvenile offenders. Right now, we're the only country in the world that allows teenagers, juveniles, to be sentenced to life without parole. That means someone could commit an offense when they're 15, and we know we all make mistakes when we're 15 and 16 years old. They could be locked up for the rest of their lives without the chance for parole. We're the only nation on earth that does that, that allows that. It's a radically inhumane policy, and it happens in half of our states around the country. Louisiana is one of them, and we're trying to change that as well.
Everybody applauds your efforts, and I know that you're very vocal about politics. You're very vocal about this election. And I want to turn to politics now because Hillary Clinton was out yesterday, did a long interview with our very own Christiane Amanpour. There you are with your wife and Hillary Clinton. That was during the campaign. You campaigned for her. How did you feel about the outcome of this election?
Well, of course I disagreed with the outcome. I thought Donald Trump would make a terrible president, and I think he's proven me right every day. But I don't rejoice in that fact. I don't feel vindicated. I feel concerned for our country. I feel concerned that we have leadership that is misguided, unprepared, bigoted, and is not going to be good for the country. I want that to change as soon as possible. And so while I think there's some merit in looking backwards at the last election, I think most of our efforts should be in looking forward to the 2018 election, making sure we get a Congress that can stand up to the president, and then looking forward to how we can move this country forward in 2018, 2020, and beyond. I don't think we need to relitigate this past election too much.
The thing is, though, is that the folks that he puts around him, when you see a decision like the Alton Sterling case, how does that leave you feeling about this new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions?
Well, Jeff Sessions has a proven history of bigotry, a proven history of fighting against every advance of civil rights that he can fight against. He is the absolute opposite of the kind of person that we need running our criminal justice policy in the federal government. And we're going to see him make all kinds of decisions that we disagree with, because he has a lot of power, and his pattern over the history of his career has been whenever there are civil rights advances, he is the one standing against those. And he lied about his record when he was testifying before the Senate. The commercials that he put out about his career were the opposite of what was true about his career. He's been fighting against civil rights advances for his entire career, and we don't expect that to change while he's in office. But luckily, states and local governments have a lot of control over our criminal justice system, and particularly when it comes to incarceration. Most of our incarcerated people in this country are done so through state and local governments. And so Free America, my organization, a lot of the work we're doing is partnering with these state and local organizations that are trying to change the laws on a state level so that we can make a dent in this mass incarceration problem that we have. Yeah. And that's why we came to Louisiana, because it's ground zero as the #1 incarcerator in the world. We wanted to come here and make a change. Yeah. And we can do that regardless of who's the Attorney General in Washington.
And it's amazing, because I grew up in Baton Rouge. It's amazing that Louisiana is the #1 incarcerator in the world. It's the incarceration capital of the world. It's just unbelievable to me. I know that you said, John, that you don't want to look back, but I have to ask you, why do you think people voted for Donald Trump? Why do you think that he became president? Why was he elected?
Well, I think when you look at the data and you look at the survey data and everything that's out there, a lot of it was based on his racial appeals. He basically ran as the white nationalist candidate, and he made people who feel like they've been left behind and kind of forgotten in a more diverse America. He made them feel like he was going to take the country back for them, that he was going to bring back jobs to their communities, that he was going to kind of restore a racial order that was more like what was around maybe 40 or 50 years ago. And he promised to do that for them, and they voted for him. And he didn't get the most votes in the popular vote, but he won enough in the right places to win the Electoral College. And we have to, as people who are progressive and believe this country is better when it's inclusive and diverse and just and has equality for all, we have to go out there and make our case and make sure we win the next election in 2018 and in 2020 as well.
John Legend, his organization is called Free America. He's down in Louisiana trying to help raise awareness and make some changes when it comes to criminal justice reform. John, thank you. Such a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. And when we come back,